All right, it looks like people are joining. And as people continue to join us, we will go ahead and get kicked off. Hello, everyone. I'm Christy Brown with Daxko. I'm so excited you joined us for today's webinar with ePACT. So just some context into why we are joining today as the world slowly reopens and members begin to return back to your facility. You are tasked with establishing new processes that keep your family safe all while on summer staff. I think that's a reality for many of the people joining us. Today, we are going to be talking with our exchange partners, ePACT, on some ways that our integrated systems streamline your processes with HIPAA compliant health screening storage to keep your members safe. So before I turn it over to Brent to do some intros, a couple of notes on housekeeping. Everyone has been muted to cut down on background noise, but please feel free to submit questions via Q&A or the chat feature. We will take time at the end to answer some of those questions. And then lastly, this will be recorded and sent as a follow-up. So if you have any great takeaways you want to share with the rest of the team, you will have that in your inbox next week. So wanted to go ahead, we get that question pretty often throughout the webinar. So I wanted to go ahead and tell you at the front end. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brent, who is on our partnerships team at Daxko.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brent Gann. I am a partnership manager here at Daxko, and really just want to give you a couple of highlights of some trends we're seeing in the market before we hand it over to our wonderful partners at ePACT. So here you can see that in 2020, childcare and camp registration really, as we started entering recovery in August, is over the 2019 numbers. And so what we're seeing is that for our WISE, J's, and community centers, that childcare and programming is a essential piece of revenue recovery. If we go to the next slide, you can see that this has continued. So January is a really great kind of marker because that was pre-COVID for all of us last year. We weren't shut down yet. So when we start comparing that, we can see that the trend of it being up is still up post-COVID. So that we're seeing this is continuing. With a 68% registration increase in program registrations and then 159% in childcare registrations. So this is really important to all of our WISE, J's, and community centers. We really want to make sure you guys have all of the information available. And so we have one of our great partners, ePACT. They sponsored our Accelerate event last year, so you've probably seen them if you were a part of that. But they've been great. They're going to talk a little bit about what they have to help you guys in this. And then at the end, I'll talk a little bit more about our partnership program and kind of how all of these partnerships work, so you have a good idea of kind of what we're bringing to you and some of the synergies that we really have with these partners. So with that, Kirsten, Matt, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Brent. And I'm just going to switch the screen share here. All right, we all seeing the right screen now? Okay, well, thanks so much, everyone, for joining today. First of all, quick intro of, thought I'd introduce myself and Matt, and we'll tell you a little bit about ePACT and how we're working with Daxko. So I'm actually a founder of ePACT. I co-founded the company in 2012 with a goal of better connecting and protecting families and organizations and, in fact, entire communities. Prior to that, I was a consultant and I worked mainly at the community level with local municipalities and so on to help to figure out how technology could be used to improve the lives of citizens. In my personal life, I'm a skier, a cyclist, a paddleboarder, and a mom, and also an eternal optimist, which I think is so critical right now as we come together as communities to try to move through this pandemic.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Webb, and I've been a part of the ePACT team and have worked very closely with Kirsten for about 7 years now. My role here at ePACT focuses on working quite closely with many of you who are on the call today, and also overseeing all of our partnerships, which of course includes our friends here at Daxko Operations. Over the last 10 years of my career, a lot of that time has been spent supporting the community recreation sector and really helping drive positive change through technology. On more of the personal side of things, I am also an avid traveler. That's a picture of me at the top of a mountain in Andorra. I'm also an avid photographer. Prior to getting into the technology world, I ran a sports photography business. And just like Kirsten, I too am an eternal optimist.
Okay, so today, just a quick run through what ePACT is, how we're helping you address pandemic challenges, and how ePACT and Daxko work together. So first off, to explain ePACT, I always like to take a step back to how ePACT began because it's quite a unique product. As I said in my intro, I'm both a mom and a person that likes to tackle challenges in our community. What I didn't mention is that I'm also a person that absolutely despises piles of paper. So I used to call the start of school year or start of camp paperwork my 2 glasses of wine and get it done paperwork. And every year I'd grumble about it and I'd pontificate that there had to be a better way to tackle this problem of piles of paperwork. And then something happened. So about 1 million years ago, I actually lived in Japan in a small city called Fukushima that no one had ever heard of until 2011. And in 2011, that name became known across the world because it was hit by one of the biggest earthquakes ever recorded, as well as a tsunami, as well as a nuclear reactor meltdown. And when that happened, I watched children for days, left in the hands of their schools and their child care providers, not knowing who was alive or what would happen. After that, I looked at those piles of emergency paper forms through a completely different lens. For the first time, I realized that, well, the paperwork sucks for me, sucks for the people that are managing it. It really, really matters. And so we decided to do something about it. And so where we ended up almost 10 years later is with ePACT. And ePACT is a secure system that automates health and emergency forms and processes for community organizations, childcare, sports, and in some cases for entire communities. For families, ePACT is actually a single secure location where they can store health and emergency information for the whole family and share and update it with any of the organizations on the system, whether those are Ys or Js or Community Rec, those sports teams or their municipality. As a network, ePACT helps you and your members prepare for and respond to any kind of emergency, whether that's something small like a bee sting, a scraped knee, or something major like an earthquake or a global pandemic. So today, ePACT is used by millions of families across hundreds of communities, all the way across North America and in fact around the world. It's also we're also now a preferred vendor of the Y of the USA. I know we've got some Ys joining us today, and so I thought I would actually share a little known ePACT fact that occurred to me the other day. My co-founder, Christine, and I have been friends since early childhood, and the YMCA Leaders Club was a really big part of our high school life. And so funnily enough, when we started ePACT 20 odd years later, 2 of the most critical people that helped to build ePACT and get it off the ground were friends that we made at Leaders. So I'm not sure how many of you are running Leaders Clubs today, but I thought I'd share that Leaders success story. So why is ePACT important now? Why is something like this critical? I don't need to tell anybody on this call how important community organizations are. You're essentially the backbone of the communities that we live in. And at this moment in history, without that backbone, there is no good path forward to anything that looks anything like normal. So the question is, where do we go from here? Over the past year, as an community focused organization, we've spent a lot of time just out talking to people. We've talked probably to some of you on the phone. We've done surveys. We've run fun polls as we've grappled with what's the best way for us as an organization focused on safety to help the community as we've gone through each stage of the pandemic. And we've heard a lot. We've heard a lot about how the pandemic has impacted you. We're thrilled to see the kind of statistics that Daxko just shared, these numbers that are increasing. But one of the other things we've heard a lot about is the stress and the strain that you've all felt as you've gone through this pandemic. So before I share some of the insights that we've seen, we've got a couple of polls that we thought would be helpful to see, where are you today? Because if there's one thing we found, it's that things change from day to day. So I think, Christy, do you have the polls to run? So the first question is just, what capacity are you running your childcare and school age programs at now? And I should have asked above 100%, because it sounds like that's the case in some places. And I'll share that what we are seeing, certainly across the sector, we're seeing some people still mostly shut down, but most, I would say, we've seen at that 50 to 70% across the board, which is positive. All right. Do we have results, Christy?
Yes. So it looks that about 80% of the people who responded said they're in the 50 to 75% range. And then we have about 20% that's almost back to normal. So that's exciting to see as well.
That's great to see. It's great to see when we look back to last year this time, this time, as we were closing doors and wondering what was going to happen. So the next question is, what about the summer?
And that poll should be open and launched as well. So far, we have 100% saying that they're almost back to normal. So that's exciting.
That is awesome. Okay, so one of the things that we've overwhelmingly heard in the research that we've done is that uncertainty is what has caused the greatest stress. And the uncertainty and it's nice to hear this confidence that things are going to be almost back to normal. Because what we're hearing a lot of is, I'm preparing for capacity anywhere from 50% to normal. I don't know what the vaccine will mean for me. What if there's an outbreak? What if regulations change again? And so the next question is, what's the biggest challenge that you're facing for the summer? Is it not knowing whether you'll be able to run? Doesn't sound like it. Is it managing with reduced budgets and staff, or being prepared to scale up or down quickly? Or is it compliance? And
it's looking like being prepared to scale up and down quickly is the top response.
And it's interesting because we've run these questions over the last couple of months in various places and so on. And this week, and we've seen even a month ago, it was budgets, are we going to run? And now this week, it's everyone we've talked to, it's that scaling. So which is great news, and is something that we'll focus the conversation on. This sense of uncertainty, and that uncertainty in how you scale is something that we've done a lot of digging into. This sense of, it's that bit of chaos of, how do we scale up quickly? What if we have to scale down? As you think about that, there's this confidence. Will our members be confident coming back into the facilities? Is there trust? Is there trust in us as as programmers? Is there trust in the other people that are going to show up? And I think the other thing that's been a very, very common piece for all of us is the fatigue. Though I think we certainly are seeing that this optimism and this ability to open up again, changing some of that in how we feel. So the really good news is, yes, summer programs are mostly all on. We're seeing more people back to work. We're seeing so much creativity in programming this winter and in what people are planning for the summer. And we're also seeing that across the sector, most people have safety protocols in place that they're feeling pretty comfortable with. The question is really, as the poll showed, how do we scale those up as well? So I'm going to just hit on those three main things. As we look at scaling, how do we scale safety? How do we ensure that you stay compliant, that you're meeting licensing and all the other things you need to do, that your participants are compliant? And how do we address this thing that really is new in this pandemic environment around trust, and people trusting not only that you have things set up properly, but that the other people around them are doing the right thing? And then, of course, how do we do that for less, when getting back on your feet may still be a key factor? So from the perspective of automation, automation as a solution for scale is a great fit because it scales automatically. So if you look at something like using a system like ePACT to collect your health and emergency information, your emergency forms, your COVID check-in, your COVID questionnaires, your check-in and checkouts, your waivers and consents, once that system is installed, it scales up and down with you. So it takes one piece off your plate because that piece is locked down no matter how many people come back into the facility, and it scales down from a cost perspective. It scales down as well should you need to scale back down. Automation also helps you to manage your safety process. So when we look at that ability to manage at different sizes of groups, to potentially manage more because your numbers per group may be smaller to allow for social distancing, you need systems in place that will allow you to actually address potentially, allergies over a large number of groups, to identify down to the individual group what challenges you have. And so when you move away from the sort of paper processes around this stuff and move to something that will allow you to automatically search and filter and say, okay, in group one, what are my challenges? What kids are going to require special care? To be able to automatically provide a camp counselor with access to those children, to their emergency contacts and so on, without that paper process and the manual processes behind it, can have a really big impact on your costs and your safety levels as you plan for the summer. So as I touched on, compliance is a different beast now than it was 12 months ago. We're collecting more information from participants. In many cases, we're asking not only for that basic health information, but we're also looking at health screening. We may soon be looking at immunization data. So the ability to collect that information and even add in automatically should things change around immunization and you need to collect this information partway through, an automated system like ePACT will allow you to plug that information in and collect it and make sure that you are complying with with your licensing needs, as well as whatever your internal requirements are. Which brings me to that next piece. So it's one thing to make sure that people are sharing their information, that you're collecting all of the stuff that you need. The next piece is that prove it piece. So, you know, are you ticking the boxes for licensing? Do you meet HIPAA requirements with respect to how you're storing this health information? Are you doing what the legal team needs you to do with respect to collecting signed forms, waivers, and so on? Can you access them quickly years from now if you need them? And now with the COVID information, are you screening where you need to? Are you archiving that data if you need to? And are you then destroying it within a short window of time if that's what your local requirements deem necessary? So the third piece is this trust piece. So going back to my original example of that, my own complacence with health and emergency information before I had this sort of wake up call. A lot of the times when we're collecting health and safety information, it is paperwork to people. It's not something that they're thinking about. It's not something that feels particularly visible to them. They're not engaged in the process. And so, you know, one of the key pieces in making sure that you have that engagement, that people are actually paying attention and doing what they need, is through that engagement, that kind of two-way engagement in the safety process. So in a system like ePACT, families actually are creating an account, they're owning this information, they're using an app where they are checking in every day, they're answering their health questions, and so they're part of the process. That helps to make sure that they're compliant, but it also means that they know everyone else is doing the same thing, which helps to build that sense of trust that you have your processes locked down, and that other members using the facilities or sending their kids to programs are also taking the steps that they need. So obviously cost has been something that's been a factor, you know, across the sector this year. Budgets have been cut, programs have been canceled, and so on. And it's, you know, we're in a year of rebuilding. And I know with the organizations that we're speaking to, looking at how to do things differently, more cost effectively now and in the future is a big consideration. So, you know, and I think when it comes to purchasing software, we often think, okay, well, there's a price tag. There's no price tag on paper. But what we've done as we've gone through over the years, and we've done this work with hundreds and hundreds of organizations, what we've found is that the savings when you move to automation of processes like this can be significant. We've seen 2, 3, 4, 5 times savings on the price of implementing the software. And where that comes from is partly staff time. It's partly just how much time is spent on the front lines, touching these pieces of paper, answering questions from parents, chasing parents to collect the information, and then chasing them to rewrite it so you can read it. I had one customer I was speaking to the other day say that she manages on the front lines a summer camp program for about 500 kids in day camp. She was spending 20 hours a week on the paperwork aspect of this, and the vast majority of those hours are gone. So savings there. There's also a savings in your hard costs around the obvious things like paper and toner and photocopying, scanning, storage costs if you are storing and archiving this information. And then there's the costs that are harder to put a price tag on, and that's the cost of risk. So whether that's the risk of information being released to somebody it shouldn't because it's floating around in a binder full of paper on a park bench, or the risk that you don't have waivers signed that you needed to have signed when you end up in some kind of a legal situation. And I'll tell you another story at another customer that I was on video with, and she turned around. They were cleaning out. Their program is closed right now, so they're cleaning stuff out. And she turns around and she grabs a banker's box of files and she throws it on her desk and says, "Kirsten, this is health forms from 2010 that we just found in a closet." So this is that privacy risk, right, of information that's sitting around and it's getting into hands potentially that it shouldn't. It's sitting in a closet after 10 years when it probably should never have been in a closet and should have been destroyed, 3 or 4 years ago. So that's kind of your normal day's costs. Added on top of that now is obviously the additional costs associated with the pandemic. So that risk of a cost of a potential outbreak. So ePACT does allow you to keep a better handle on that tracking and compliance piece to reduce that risk around potential transmission. So in terms of, I know Brent's going to talk more about the Daxko Partnership program. The way that ePACT works with Daxko, we have a secure API exchange with Daxko, which means that when people register on Daxko for programs, if it's a program that you've identified as one where you need to collect health and emergency information, Daxko passes a small amount of information securely from your Daxko account to your ePACT account, essentially passing participant names, parent email addresses, and roster information. And that actually just automatically triggers a process in ePACT that sends out requests for your health information and just takes that whole process off your hands. So I will pass it back over to Brent and Christy to talk a bit more about the partner program. And thank you for your time. And certainly, if you have questions, I'm sure we'll accept questions afterwards.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking some time and talking through ePACT. We really appreciate that. As said, feel free to go ahead and start asking questions. We'll pull those up and go through them. Talking a little bit about our partnership program. So you may have heard late last year, we launched the Daxko Exchange. And the Daxko Exchange is a partnership network of incredible vendors like ePACT who ultimately bring some sort of additional value to the solutions that you have with us. So there's a website for it. You can go to exchange.daxko.com. And actually there you can pull up all of our current partners and see what they do. So if you go to the ePACT page, you'll see that they're HIPPA compliant. They do paperless collection of campers and childcare packets. And it has a detail of exactly the information that's transferring. So we're really excited to have these partners in this program. And we hope you're excited about it too, because we know that partnering with best in breed solutions are how you can have the best solutions for your customers and your members. So really thankful for that. Just kind of talking through that, I do want to make sure everybody knows that if you're ever looking at something and you're interested in some sort of partner, you can always reach out to Daxko and let us know. If you have questions about a potential partnership, you can of course reach out to that, or there's content on there so that if you went to ePACT, you can actually reach out to them from that page as well. So we're really excited. I guess I should open up the questions and see if there were any. I don't see any. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to send those. But once again, thank you to ePACT. Really appreciate you guys taking the time. I come from the healthcare industry, so HIPAA means a lot because I spent 8 years on HIPAA compliant solutions. It's incredible to what you're offering to our YSJs and community centers in that regard. So thank you very much. And Christy, with that, I'll hand it back to you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you guys for joining. I loved the snippet of that your co-founder was, you were both part of the why. I think that that's a great tie-in to our customers, and it was great hearing about the story behind how ePACT started, and then how it is serving our customers, and the movement now, especially as we are seeing registrations ramp up. So thank you all so much. If you guys have any questions, you see the sales at epactnetwork.com there. And then also we will be sending this out as a follow-up. So as a reminder, if you want to share this with the team, we will make sure that we get it in your hands early next week. And with that, I think that we are all wrapped up, but thank you guys so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Great.
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.
See ya.
Bye.